Hello and welcome to this new OSINT Origins podcast. I'm Sylvain HAJRI, OSINT-FR.com co-founder, and today we are very glad to welcome Lorand, Bodo, Osint Curious co-founder and also OSINT Jobs founders. Hello, Lorand, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. This is such an honor. Thanks.
It's a pleasure for us. Can you please introduce yourself and say more about your professional background, please?
Yeah, sure. So, where shall I start? Like, I usually do these interviews as well, and then I ask the same questions, and I don't know where to start. So, the short story is kind of like I got into OSINT by accident. I didn't know what it was, but I was interested in the kind of, in this kind of information gathering and, trying to answer questions. So that's the short answer. The long answer, I can give you the long answer as well. Basically, so my background is more like in academia. So early on when I left school, I went to the military first for almost 2 years. I did my basic service and extended it a little bit. And then during that time, I got interested in international security, specifically terrorism. And this made me think, like, what do I want to do with my life? And so after a couple of, things happening, I then decided to go to university. And this is where I did a bachelor's degree in political science and Oriental studies. So here the focus early on was on what attracted me at that time was, of course, like the big terrorist organizations and trying to understand them. So trying to study them. That's why I thought political sciences gives you a good background of understanding complex issues worldwide, and Oriental studies primarily to learn the Arabic language, which is extremely difficult, but very beautiful language as well. And then this is what I did. And during the bachelor's, I decided to move on to the next stage and do masters, and also decided to do a PhD, which in the end I couldn't do. Because of financial reasons, it was just too expensive. This was in London. But I got a Master's of Research in the end, regardless. So in total, I did 3 master degrees. Not because I wanted to collect them, I keep saying this, but just because it just happened. So the first Master's was actually a double Master's, where I think, if people are listening to this and they're considering to do something similar, I highly recommend it. I learned so much. So the first year was in the UK. Which was good for me, to speak the language and also improve my English. And then the second year was in Germany. And, you do 2 years and then you get 2 masters. So you can't say no. And then I wanted to do a PhD. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, as I said. But at least I got a Master's of Research. And, during the time, so this was starting early on in my bachelor. As I said, I wanted to focus on, jihadism and Salafism and study the phenomenon specifically in the German context. And this is also how my OSINT journey started, because the lecturers, they told me, like, you're gonna struggle. You will not find primary data. It's gonna be very tough and difficult. And then I just went out on my own and was, finding all these hate preachers, let's put it that way. And I was really curious to see, like, all the information they put out on the YouTube accounts and all the social media accounts. And then I started just by curiosity, trying to identify more websites and see more social media accounts, and was just surprised by how open it was, what they were talking about, and especially the people commenting. There was a video published by this one person. And then he gives advice on, how to do certain things in society. And then all these comments were like very, you could see that these people were radicalized. Some of them also even like violently radicalized. And this got me really into this thing of how can I use this information and how can I use it for research purposes? And then one thing led to another. And then I stumbled across, OSINT. I didn't know what it was. And then I, Googled it and understood, like, open source intelligence. Oh, this is what, intelligence agencies do. I'm like, and then read more and more, and then understanding slowly that, all these, by piecing or finding these pieces of information and putting them together, analyzing them, you can actually create something like a product. And then I was like really hooked. And then I did a SOCMINT course once that got me really started with the basics. And then literally like all the rest of it, I was just like self-taught. And I think I would also say that I'm kind of like one of these people that have a different background. So usually you have people, coming from, I don't know, like public sector, law enforcement or something, where they get trained professionally. Whereas I and many others just like are self-taught or did also some courses. And this is what I really like about the field of OSINT. So, the more you're interested in it, and, curiosity plays a huge role, the more you just want to learn, and then you learn new things, you try them, and then it works out. But I still want to stress that professional training is still very important, especially when you do things like intelligence analysis and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like about my background as an OSINT practitioner. So I also worked in various positions, primarily focusing on, researching violent extremists and terrorist entities online. And here it was more about, trying to use OSINT techniques to extract insights and knowledge to counter these entities. So it was about, how can we measure, the effectiveness of, for instance, counter-narratives. So counter-narratives being like, you publish a video and then you tag people, they should watch it, or you host it on specific websites. And when people watch this, it should counter the narratives that they believe in. How could you measure the effectiveness of such a campaign? Was one of the research projects I worked on. But also another project I was involved in was researching OSINT techniques and tools to, how to identify. This was at the time with the so-called Islamic State. How to identify these people who went over. How can you actually find those people in the first place? And how can we, extract the relevant knowledge, information about these people that can be also used, for law enforcement and other agencies that are interested in these people to, for prosecution purposes. And these were like the things, and later on also in other places, trying to quantify the amount of the propaganda and everything that is put out, and also to systematically analyze, how it actually works, how these narratives, or how the propaganda is being distributed, to better understand it, to then effectively counter it by, trying to tackle this platform or cutting it here so they can't spread it. And throughout the years, I've also done, specifically in this context, training courses, focusing on these techniques, because I learned quickly that no one was really doing it. Not that no one was doing it, but that's kind of like a niche in this field. And there are many, many great people out there who have been researching violent extremist and terrorist entities, also with a specific OSINT focus. But this is what I kind of like found for myself, the interest in OSINT, and specifically the research topic. And this led me also to create, start.me. Everyone has a start.me page, right? So I have also, I think, 3 or so. And one of them, it's radter-osint.com. So radicalization terrorism-osint. And what I try to do is, because I realized many practitioners and researchers, they also asked me like, what kind of techniques or tools can you share and what would you recommend? So I built this dashboard for, like an overview of, these are all the research institutes that publish amazing research, and these are also like specific OSINT tools that you can use for this platform, for that platform, etc. And then I just got hooked, with this OSINT, and just carried throughout. And then you always find something new that interests you, and then you just continue. And for someone who is just starting out, or even someone who wants to transition, I always say, like, whatever it is that you want to do, just follow your passion. My passion, in this case, it's, researching these interesting entities, but also combine it with OSINT and try and find new research techniques that you can share and help others. So exactly. Long answer, as I said.
But answer very interesting. So after your military experience, you said you trained in OSINT in SOCMINT, but did you done some challenges or this kind of stuff, or it didn't exist at this time? No.
Yeah. So I also want to stress. So I did like a basic service. So I wasn't like trained or anything. I was actually trained as a driver. I can drive, but that's about it. So I haven't done anything in this regard. But in terms of like coming out and doing some of the challenges that we have right now, there was nothing really out there where you could kind of like join and then try to do something. I was also aware when I started off that my skills were really rudimentary, so there was not much, and I also knew about the limitations. But specifically, at universities, I was also not allowed to do certain studies because of the ethics and the legal aspects involved. To be honest, at that time, also the supervisors, when I did my bachelor's, they weren't really sure about the legality of this thing, and also the fact. And for me, what was also important, and up to the present day, like I will not do anything that could impact an ongoing investigation. For instance, this is very important to keep in mind. That just because you can find these chat rooms and you could interact with them, that by doing this, first of all, I don't have a legal ground to do this. Even if it's just interest, people need to be aware, and this is specifically like in this context, need to be aware that this is a very sensitive subject, and it could impact investigations. And I heard stories from that journalists, they try to have a cool story, and they were following jihadists online, and they were communicating with them, and then law enforcement, after 6 months, found out that they were talking to a journalist and not to on the other end that it was a jihadist. And this is the kind of thing I mean, like you don't know who are you interacting with, and as a principle, like I'm more passive, like I'm not active, because this is not, in terms of from my point of view when I was doing it, I didn't, my research questions were not asking like find out the name of this person by talking to them or so. It was more like describing what you can see, so passive scanning. And what's also important here is that by doing this kind of passive thing, you easily, and this goes also quickly, you can enter into active things as well. By joining chat rooms, for instance, people will notice you, and they will maybe also reach out and ask, by the way, who are you? So these things really were always in my mind, especially that someone could knock on my door at any point and be like, hey, who are you? What are you doing on these chat rooms? So when I was working in professional context, like this was, everything had to be solid in terms of, you have certain standard operating procedures, operational security, absolutely important. And we were communicating with law enforcement, for instance, and also with other stakeholders, because this was like a professional setting. So I'm just saying these things in case someone is interested in doing something similar. And just because you can find easily like Telegram links, and it's not the way forward. There should be, there's a low, there's no barrier to enter the world of OSINT. And I caution, there are areas where you can play around, but you should always keep in mind that it can always lead to, to harm in the real world by doing certain things, by geolocating, for instance, a location and revealing the location of a person that took a video which is very sensitive and putting it on Twitter, for instance, and then giving everyone the location of where it was filmed from. And in this context, like extremism and terrorism specifically, as I said, like it can be super dangerous. So coming also back to your question, at that time there was no real opportunities to take part in this. And this was also the time when, I started talking to people on social media as well. And then we kind of like had the same thing, like there needs to be something where people can practice. And the OSINT community was pretty small at that time. And I remember even, Bellingcat, for instance, I was following them early on, and they weren't generally on like one tweet that was like, I found it so cool, like geolocation and how they did it and everything. It had like, I don't know, 10, 12 likes maybe, and some retweets. By now, I mean, everyone knows Bellingcat. Like it went through the roof. Like really, really interesting and great work. And at that time, there was not much out there. And to practice, that's why I'm stressing, like, professional training is very important. So you are guided basically, and they walk you through, because not everyone is aware of the legal aspects of by doing certain things. In particular countries, the legislation differs. There are lots of things to consider. But yeah, there was definitely a gap in the kind of like OSINT market, I would say.
Yeah. You say that then you specialized in the issue of radicalization and jihadist propaganda. What were the limits of OSINT at this time and on the subjects, and how did the work of analysis evolve? For example, on the propaganda, does it change in 2022? Yeah. Is it the same propaganda stuff and the same techniques in OSINT to found this propaganda, or?
Yeah, so that's a good one. I mean, when we talk about this kind of things, you should view these, extremist and terrorist entities. And I don't want to talk specifically about one particular group, but more as like general. And this includes also like the wider far right, I would say, because I've also done work on this issue. But I would view it as like an ecosystem. And this is also what you can find in the literature. And that's why it's so important to monitor these groups, to understand, where they communicate and how they adapt to social media pressure. And one of the things, so this was like many years ago, specifically with the so-called Islamic State, that it was so open and big on the big social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. And everyone remembers the good old days with Facebook, when you were able to manipulate the URLs and get really interesting stuff. I mean, the good old days, and suddenly it stopped. And when I was involved in this research project, Facebook was absolutely amazing. Like one of the favorite search strings I was performing was to find people who like the Great British Bake Off. So this is like a very popular TV show where people go out and then they want to become the master pastry chef or whatever, and it's about baking and you have challenges, and it's very popular, and even I watched it. And then to look at people who like the British Bake Off and the people who like specific pages of, at that time, the so-called Islamic State, and then do an intersect search and see who liked that and that. And the list of people was pretty interesting. Like, this was also one technique, to uncover people, with this very niche interest. Because the idea was also, to how can we identify them and how can we find, these people with these two interests and try different things as well. So that was one thing, and it was pretty open. And then, of course, social media efforts. They have ramped up their efforts and significantly clamped down on them. First and foremost, like on Facebook and Twitter as well. Like, there were lots of campaigns, but there were also many other groups that publicly posted the accounts and helped also social media to show, like, first of all, that there are these accounts, and also, to help them to remove these accounts. And they have done a lot. I have to say they have done a lot, and there were also operations, for instance, by Europol, coordinated takedown efforts, and there was one, I think this was in 2019, with specifically on Telegram. And I know why it was so noticeable, because everyone was on Twitter. I lost my account. I lost my research account because they went after every single account. I don't know the details, but it was a very successful operation, I would say. And also afterwards, I mean, they kept like cracking down on them. And this is also what you are currently seeing with some of these violent, or far-right accounts. Not all of them, but many of them. And coming back to your question as well, like what I can see how they evolve. So there was, in the literature, they also talk about like a guacamole effect. So you kind of like, you get rid of them here, but they pop out here, and here. So then there's also the question of, should you clamp down on them so hard? Because by doing this, you force them into the corner or somewhere else, and that somewhere else can be even more secure, where you can't get into this kind of thing. But with these groups, one needs to just kind of like see it from this ecosystem point of view, that they want to reach out to as many people as possible. It's about spreading their propaganda and spreading whatever they believe in and what they do. And technically speaking, you could go into a super secure app, but no one will download it because you have to follow these instructions, and OPSEC will be super high. So it's not user friendly. That's why you kind of like have to have this compromise of, okay, then let's settle down on this platform here. And then kind of like go from there. But this will of course limit again, the reach, and this will also lead to again account takedowns and so forth. So this is always like a game. And one thing I wanted to stress as well is, when we talk about platforms, that we shouldn't just look at the deep web. And deep web, I mean like social media platforms first and foremost, or encrypted messaging apps, but also look at the surface web. And there are also many great entities out there that you kind of like monitor them and also put them on websites and show them that these sites are still active. And then, as I said, the ecosystem, understand where do these groups host their websites, who are the providers, the infrastructure, and they use many different services. It's not just going on one social media platform. No, it's about, this thing, if they take it down here, we have 20 copies here, and here. And one study I want to highlight is by Tech Against Terrorism. So I used to work at Tech Against Terrorism, that I have to say. It's a UN-backed organization, a public-private partnership that helps smaller tech companies to tackle terrorist use of the internet whilst respecting human rights. So that's the mandate. And they specifically support smaller platforms. Smaller platforms is anything that's not, the big Facebook, Twitter, etc. Because they often lack the support or the data science team to get rid of these, or even to just communicate with, whoever comes and says, take this down, please. And they did a study recently, which is a really good one, where they looked at the surface web to just highlight that there are so many websites operated by violent extremists and terrorist entities, and they are in the open. Anyone can access them, find them through search engines. And while we talk about, this company has to do more, that company has to do more, we should also start talking about what can we do about surface web. So that's also an interesting thing. And in terms of techniques, how the evolution of, how to research these groups, I just can say that monitoring is key. And this is also, if for instance, I don't monitor them for let's say a month or so, I lose out on many different things and new developments. For instance, a new regulation comes up, and then they get tackled, or they get removed from this platform, and then they move to another one, and then you have to find this platform. So it's like a cat and mouse game. But there are some, these entities, they kind of keep a house, keep their home base. They try to keep it, and it's challenging at times. Yeah,
I can imagine. You are well known on the OSINT community to have been one of the OSINT Curious founder. Can you explain what was the purpose and what is the purpose of this website, of this community initially, and what is for our listeners who might not know what is the history of OSINT Curious?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I have to say, so I am one of the co-founders, but I left OSINT Curious to start a new project. This is just because of time. I just, I don't want to commit to too many things. So I left OSINT Curious. But hopefully everyone knows OSINT Curious. It's a really cool project. And the idea, came about. So we met at a conference in the Netherlands. And this was also coming back to one of the previous questions. There was nothing out there to practice. But we knew each other from Twitter. So I was tweeting about, researching stuff and extremism. And this is also how I knew, Technizet, for instance, because I was following her. And then kind of like, I got an invite to the conference to speak. And I was like, hey, cool. I'm so humbled. Thank you so much. And then I meet all the other guys. And then after the conference, we kind of like came together and, just to have a chat like we have right now. And then we were all saying like, you know what, this is so cool, OSINT community. Like it was a really, everyone was saying the same, like, hey, we have to do something. And I think it was Micah, who had this...
Micah Hoffman. Right?
Yes, exactly, at Web Breacher, who had the idea of, he had this name always in mind, OSINT Curious. Because we were all talking about the same thing, like everyone's curious, how did you get into OSINT? I just explained how I am, and I guess the same is with you, like how did you get into OSINT? This curiosity. And then we said, you know what, we should start something like a project, a community project, that kind of like becomes a hub for anyone who wants to get into OSINT. And by providing, blog posts on very specific issues, and Technisette, for instance, she has written quite a lot of blog posts on social media specific, because this is like her area. A very good blog posts, but also Nico, Sector, and all the other guys, very nice people, and super approachable. And this is what I also like about this community, that whenever you have a question, you can reach out to them and ask them on Twitter, hey, I have a question, can you help with this? They point you to resources, and it was really, I had such a great time. And I actually was yesterday, we had a live stream, and they invited me back for like an interview, which was really cool and very nice of them. And I mean, I'm still in contact with all of them, just out of time reasons, I had to leave. But yeah, it's a really cool project, and for anyone who wants to check it out, it's on osintcurio.us. And they have a bunch of resources on Discord as well, and the blogs, webcasts, or the live streams. Lots of really useful resources, definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because in OSINT community, I like it because we can talk to anybody. We don't care about the nationality. We just care about not the skills, but about the passion of the guys, and that's why I love this community.
Yeah, me too. Exactly as you said. Like you can hear from my Terminator accent that I'm from Germany most likely. Yeah, you can hear it, but it doesn't matter. Like whatever the level of English is or whatever language it is, you communicate. It's just about meeting these interesting people, and what unites everyone is this passion for open source intelligence. Some may argue it's very geeky, like talking about these things, but I don't know. It's just something I'm so happy that I found it, because many people are struggling with just general, not just OSINT, to find something that they are interested in. And I keep saying to people, even if it's not OSINT, because they ask like, what kind of job would you recommend? And I keep saying like, listen to whatever your heart or whatever your inner thing says. What makes you happy, whatever it is that you are passionate about. It doesn't have to be like terrorism and OSINT. It could have been also something else, like, I don't know, you like to bake, for instance, and you get so passionate about it. You start a blog, you share recipes, and then you meet other people. Like, this is so cool. I really like the community. It's amazing.
As you said, recently you launched the OSINT Jobs project.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more
sure.
the history and what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I left the OSINT Curious project to start this new project called OSINTJobs.com. And OSINT Jobs, like this idea, has been in my head for quite a long time. It was whenever I did training sessions or people contacted me and they asked me, hey, I've been following you and I find it really cool what you do. I also want to do something similar. I also want to do terrorism. I also want to do, not I want to do terrorism, but OSINT,
Too late, you are recorded.
So, and asking me for kind of like career advice. And then I also, from observing just the community, there's no such one single resource or hub for, providing this advice. So this is when I said like, okay, I want to start this, community project and to provide this kind of hub. So people, when they have questions about careers, jobs or skills, can just go onto osintjobs.com And what it is, so it's not, so at the moment when you visit the website, it looks like a job board, but I stress that it's more than just a job board. So you will find jobs. So all these jobs are handpicked, and handpicked for a reason, just because there are many jobs out there that don't necessarily say OSINT, but the tasks involved is exactly the same thing. So you have to answer specific questions. You start with a requirement. You have to collect information from public sources, and then make sure it's a good that the source is good and verifiable, etc. Analyze it, and then create a product. And these kind of jobs exist, and some companies also don't know that there is something called OSINT. But there are also many people who have been doing OSINT and don't know it's OSINT. I was one of them. So that's why I have these handpicked jobs to help people apply and find these positions, so they don't have to do it. And why I say it's more than just a job board is because it also has blog posts. And these blog posts, so at the moment we've got over 10 career interviews. And what I did was asking practitioners from different industries to explain to me how they got started, where they work, what they do, what industry it is, what career advice they have, what skills are necessary in this specific field. So people who have the question of, hey, I like OSINT and InfoSec, how can I get started? That you can just point them to there. And they also have a person who they could reach out to. And there are more plans for this specific section. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment, from all of these 500 jobs, I think almost, I added them into a database, and I also extracted the requirements and the skills and everything that you need for this particular job, to do a meta-analysis for each different industry. So for instance, OSINT in InfoSec, OSINT in corporate security, OSINT in anti-money laundering, crypto-based cryptocurrency, and this kind of in this industry. What are companies asking for? What are the skills? And then on this section, you will then also find all the information, so people can look at different career paths. For instance, they are interested in InfoSec, then they will see these are the top skills currently required, and this will be updated every 4 months. So hopefully, these are the up-to-date skills of what the industry is asking for, and this will help the people on to find jobs and grow their skills. So the bottom line is, the mission of OSINT Jobs is to help the community grow their skills and advance their careers, and the vision behind OSINT Jobs is to push the boundaries in OSINT by empowering everyone, telling them what skills they should focus on and grow to become successful in this area. And we also launched a podcast recently, which again dives deeper into specific career questions. So the podcast is very different from this one, for instance, because it will only ask about the skills. I don't want to talk about some stories of OSINT or so, but more understanding. Okay, you work in the most recent one was with Skip Shiphorse. Yeah,
hello Skip.
Yeah, hey Skip. Yeah, great guy, and he is specializing in languages in OSINT. And then the questions are all about languages, like how can you learn languages? How important is it in OSINT investigation, etc., etc. So like a 360-degree around languages in OSINT to help people grow their skills. And there are lots of other plans for OSINT Jobs. We also got a newsletter, by the way, where people can sign up for free. And it's the next one coming out tomorrow. And it's a weekly digest of the latest tips and tricks from Twitter. Then also top stories and articles mentioning OSINT. So it's not just about, this is the latest tool found on Twitter, but also that industries are talking about OSINT. So people can also follow that, the trends, market trends, etc. And of course, the latest exclusive offers, because oftentimes we work with these companies together. They approach us and they're looking for talents. So they give us the job descriptions and we post it on them. So there are lots of plans ahead of how we can, help the community find jobs, and also the companies how to find suitable talents. So lots of things planned. And yeah, that's about it.
And it's really interesting because you see a lot of job offers on OSINT in the past months. In your opinion, which OSINT specialty will be growing, will be in growing demand in the few months, few years?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, what I can see right now from just monitoring them at these jobs and industries is that especially in the kind of like blockchain fields, crypto fields, that there's a huge demand for investigators. And I think this has to do with, and I'm not an expert on this topic, but this has to do with know your customer policy, I think, anti-money laundering and all these things. And you need to have investigators to kind of like double check, like, where's this money going from and to? And I think you also have an episode with chain analysis, right? So this,
with Thomas Desouté,
yeah, exactly. So this kind of field I can see, and especially when we think about future technologies, and this leads me back to, looking at extremist organizations, because this is what interests me, trying to understand the trends in technology and how these groups utilize them. Because every single person, I mean, this is not extremist, but every single person uses new technology. And how can this be abused? I mean, everything, technology, double-edged sword, will be always abused. But how can we have to understand future tech to then kind of like see, okay, in order to counter this, so these groups can't use it, we have to do this. So that's all about it. And I think, or what I can see, is that there's a growing demand in these kind of skills, to understand the technologies and be able to, query blockchains, different blockchains, because there are so many. And, the investigation. And there was also, like, when I think about cryptocurrencies, I read a book. It was I think it was Nick Fourneau. I think I also spoke to him on a Tech Against Terrorism podcast. He wrote this excellent book on cryptocurrency investigations. There aren't that many. And this was also something I got really like into and fascinated me as well. But I couldn't, pursue it to open up a new field or anything. But anyways, I think this is a big thing where you will have lots of opportunities. And when we think about, the metaverse that's currently being built by Facebook, and when they announced the name of the company will now be changed to Meta, you can see all into metaverse. This is something that's gonna be big, and the metaverse is already around. And so I haven't done any research on this, like thorough research on metaverse and extremist groups, but I'm just thinking out loud now. So if you're able to put on some goggles, like in Ready Player One in that film, and then you dive into this area of like wherever in the world, and then you meet like-minded people where you can talk about extremist stuff. You're not anymore on Telegram or communicating on Twitter, but you put it on and you can see each other. You can have different, skins and different things and walk around, even walk to a bar. Like anything is possible. And I can see that from an investigation point of view, like how on earth, like how can you follow there? So I can see the social engineering skills also becoming more and more important if you want to engage with these individuals. Because yes, you can be, and I'm just thinking out loud again, you can be like anonymous, but you still have to talk to people and interact with them, because it's not going to be like passively just sitting in a room and then looking left and right and observing them. People will ask you, who the hell are you? So maybe also in this area, social engineering skills, crypto. So this is what I would say in the future.
By the way, thanks to Sylvain who done a new diagram, of OSINT investigations on NFT and with OpenSea and everything.
I saw. Yeah. This is like the NFTs. You see, like the blockchain technologies and with NFTs. That's also something I looked into just for my personal understanding, not for OSINT purposes, but it's like it's incredible with the Ethereum blockchain, for instance, that these that you can build whatever you want, like a
the
program.
Smart contract.
Exactly, yeah.
With Solidity language.
Yeah, exactly. That gets executed and anything, and you have so many startups now trying to think what they can build. But I also think, blockchain technology for OSINT, how could it be used? And I think I mentioned it on another podcast that, in terms of mis and disinformation, or, what's currently happening, you have all those videos, Ukraine and Russia, the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then can we somehow make sure that this video is stored on a blockchain, so whenever someone queries it, the algorithm is smart enough to make sure that this is definitely from this conflict. So in 5 years' time, in another conflict, if this video gets shared, the blockchain will tell you no.
Yeah, you can maybe you can do it with we call this oracle on smart contract. And for example, you see the location, you see the weather, the day and everything, and then you do the work of analyst. And it can be interesting to do like a score or this kind of stuff. With this kind of a smart contract. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like the sky's the limit, I think, and that's why you have so many startups. And it's just very interesting to see like how OSINT could evolve using these technologies. But also, other things like how is society changing? Are we going to use, are we still using the Twitter? Twitter, like it's my favorite app. I love it. But are we going to change? Will there be something else? Like, I can't think of anything right now. But, when we are in the metaverse, are you gonna, at the moment, this looks so weird, like always people are on their phones, like head down. Will it change, like in terms of like, I flip the switch and I'm like in the metaverse now, and then people are just doing this and everyone knows, oh my God, he's in the metaverse now. Something like this, I don't know. But it's really exciting.
About OSINT Jobs, do you think there is countries like where it's more easy, where it's easier to find an OSINT job? For example, you find a lot in the UK or in the US. Do you share this opinion or?
Yeah. So US, UK, definitely. These are also like they have lots of offers always on, but also European countries, many, and also in Middle East as well. So with OSINT Jobs, when sourcing jobs, I try to include, not to focus on very specific regions, Europe, or in my case, Germany, just because I speak the language. I try to, for the entire community, and the community is big, and there are like countries everywhere. But and this is what I said earlier. It could be that, the US and UK, they are already aware of this, especially like security industry, about the importance of OSINT. And that's why you also see these articles, popping up everywhere, trying to influence also, politics to be like, hey, OSINT is so important. We have to heavily invest in this. And right now, what we see is exactly OSINT is so important, and it will become even bigger now. I think that when was it? August 21. The Economist published this article, "The Promise of Open Source Intelligence." I read The Economist, and when I read it, and I knew that every executive manager who's reading The Economist will look at the cover story and like, what is open source intelligence? Reads it and thinks like, hey, this is pretty cool. How can we use it? And then look inside the organization, and maybe it just takes some time, to figure out how companies can utilize this for their purposes, because not everyone needs satellite images. But it's about, having these curious people, combining different data sets, analyzing it to extract the relevant pieces, they need to find the answers. So it's pretty exciting. And, coming back to your question, yes, US, UK is definitely easy. But what I can also see is that some companies, and, we had this exclusive offer with a company, with a company, and they had 7 positions to advertise for. So this was pretty good for OSINT Jobs, and I'm still following up. And some of these roles were remote positions. So I can also see this as like a trend in the OSINT job market, just because it's coincide or it goes hand in hand with the wider trends in the job market, thanks to the pandemic, that people started realizing that I don't like my job. I don't want to drive 1 hour to get to work if I can work from home. And it's so nice, I don't even have to put on pants or whatever and just have my coffee and start working. That people, I forgot, it has a specific name. And I think the CEO of LinkedIn, he wrote a blog post and coined the term of, I forgot. And he was saying like that this is like one massive factor people are rethinking. But also, with OSINT, you just need a laptop and internet, and you can work from anywhere. So if you are in the business of, let's say, corporate security, looking situational awareness of what's going on in different countries. And you can, instead of getting people in your city where you're based and pay them high salaries, office costs, is it possible to manage a team that is spread out across the world with people who speak the local language and are, on the ground and can even maybe, just go on somewhere or the local news, tap into networks, talk to people on the ground and get the information from there. Is it not possible? And I mean, companies are already doing this to some degree, but, remote working opportunities, I think that they will also increase because companies will realize that, no one wants to come into the office or hybrid roles maybe, but remote working opportunity might be something.
For you, what is the best way to learn about OSINT and to prove your skills on a CV about OSINT?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important one. I keep telling people when they reach out and ask for advice, like I want to find an OSINT job and I've been unlucky. And then I ask, okay, which positions have you applied for? Okay, these positions. Okay, then I ask, okay, this is a position specifically looking into, let's say, cryptocurrency. What have you done in this area? Can you just name the experience that you have and some projects you worked on? And then there's the gap. So what I'm trying to say here is that for people who want to apply for positions and writing cover letters and CVs, it's all about demonstrating that you have the experience by just having a bullet point saying OSINT and then writing in brackets advanced or something. It's not what companies want to see. What they want to see is that you understand the industry and the tasks involved. So for instance, corporate security, GSOC analyst or something, where you have to write daily reports, strategic, tactical, whatever, situational awareness of what's going on and how this is impacting the business. I spoke on OSINT Jobs to people on this very specific issue because they are the industry experts, and they were all telling me the same thing: report writing skills, writing. And also when I see wider community, I haven't seen a lot of blog posts on how to write reports. It's mostly on on techniques and lists
Collecting.
of collecting.
But OSINT, we know it's collecting and analyzing the information.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's exactly 100%. But there seems to be this kind of, people love tools. I don't know why, but they just love them and love to collect them. There are even lists of lists. So, which is good. I'm not saying this is bad, but people should not forget that it's not just about these tools. And if you want to impress with your CV, it's not by impressing through, writing some bullet point and then I can run Recon NG, which is still a very important tool. But you should instead say, like, I can do, I can describe a case or something that you worked on that was successful in a cover letter, for instance. So if you apply for a position, where you have to write daily reports, and you have to describe complex issues in very simple terms and, very short, then also do this in your cover letter. And then, of course, you're going to use these different tools to come to this thing, but you have to demonstrate, and this is the important thing, demonstrated experience. And the thing is here, so if you are starting or you're trying to transition and you don't have a lot of experience or you haven't worked in this specific area, but you would love to, then you kind of like have to think about how can you gain these skills or this experience. And one thing is also, of course, professional courses help as well, because you get issued a certificate. And then you can, for instance, this is always case by case, right? So I don't want to give like a broad, I want to give just a broad answer. But what you could do, for instance, if you want to become whatever, let's say, GSOC, all right? And then you kind of like do the professional certificate, you get the course, then you can kind of like maybe start writing a blog, gain experience, or reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask for someone who could mentor you or ask them questions, and then kind of like go for entry-level jobs. And there are also some entry-level jobs in this area specifically to get into it. And then, if I, for instance, saw a CV and I see someone is clearly like starting off, has the experience through like did like a course, is very interested, runs his own blog where weekly summarizes the world news. I can have a look at that. I can read through it and see like, oh, I like the writing skill, like clearly can write, clearly can summarize a very complex issue. This is like, a demonstrated experience. And either you're lucky and you can maybe get an internship, a paid one, or you can kind of like create it yourself and try and just run your own blog and post it on Twitter. So many people have done that and have become very, very successful by just, putting out their own content and trying to do this. I was, also putting out some content and trying to show this. I was doing it indirectly. I wasn't like, oh, that's my marketing strategy, I have to show. No, I was just like, I wanted to share stuff. But people notice and then they talk to you and say like, hey, would you be interested in working for us? Would you be interested in working as a freelancer? I'm like, hell yeah, that would be cool. So yeah, demonstration through the demonstrate your experience is crucial.
Yeah. Which people or websites do you recommend to follow for someone interested in the OSINT field, but also in the terrorism? I mean, not terrorism like you said before, but in studying terrorism, on the investigation on terrorism and this kind of stuff.
Or there are a couple of websites, and I will send you the links so you can put them in the show notes. So the one resource that comes into my mind, so let's start off with OSINT first. So there are the usual suspects, I would say, like OSINT Curious is one of them. Then there's of course Bellingcat as well. There's OSINT Combine. There are so many Intel techniques, technizet.com, Sector 035.
The newsletter of Sector.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's been sharing the newsletter for years, and it's like a valuable source. Like everyone knows him. He's amazing. Sector 035, also one of the founding members. And yeah, this was, so Sector 035's newsletter. Then OSINTjobs.com now, also with a newsletter. And you can, what I recommend is that people, they can create RSS feeds and then easily follow all of them. So Sector 035's newsletter is also an RSS feed. OSINT Curious, what else? OSINT Dojo, also amazing. Perfect. And this is also, that is also one thing people can do. Demonstrated experience, become Shogun. Yeah, right.
Sure. CTF is a nice stuff to put on your CV.
Yeah. Also, Micah has now another project, OSINT.games, where you can also do CTFs. There are also many CTFs where people can participate, and that's also something to highlight in a CV, is to say like I contributed in an OSINT capture the flag, and uncovering crucial evidence or information about the whereabouts of a missing person. Like these are all things that you can highlight your skills. Of course, if you win a black badge, you can say like, hey, I got the black badge. Many other things. So this is one thing to just follow. And I think the easiest way to follow everything in OSINT is just follow the hashtag OSINT on Twitter. I mean, Discords, there are so many Discords as well. Like you've got also a Discord channel. There are many groups, and it really depends on what your interests are. And there are some Discords that are more for like talking about tools. Some are more focused on, investigating together. I think there are lots of opportunities where one can just get the information for OSINT. And what I also like is that, all this information is publicly available. So.
Yeah. And in a terrorism case.
Exactly. So for this issue, so I created the start.me page, which is available under RAD, so RADTER dash, OSINT, OSINT.com, so radter-osint.com, and this is a start.me page where I have different categories for these specific issues. So one lists all the big research institutes, Tech Against Terrorism, for instance, the Sylvain Group, Institute for Strategic Dialogue, Moonshot CV, and RUN, Europe, and all these big entities that publish amazing research. Europol as well. They have also the annual reports. So one can just find all these entities, because what I also noticed, that people asked me like, hey, I got assigned to this new thing and I have to, investigate these groups. I'm new to it. Where can I get started? And that's why I also created it. And there you will also find lots of OSINT tools, but that's kind of like the digest of all these entities out there. And I also have a special category for far right, so people can get into this field quickly. Glossary of terms, that's different area, new terms, terminology, meme culture, gamification, all kinds of things.
In my opinion, the best way to learn OSINT is to read report. And like, for example, Bellingcat reports or any report in OSINT, you will see the methodology, you will see the tools, you will see everything. And for me, it's one of the best stuff. So do not hesitate to follow all these papers and everything. So which OSINT investigations have stood out for you?
Oh, which stood out? Do you mean generally or the ones I did?
The both.
Yeah, both. Which one stood out? I mean, there are so many, and I'm always like, one thing I can talk about now is the Benjamin Strick with the Center for Information Resilience. What they have been doing, the map, with using the or working with the community and with other entities to document everything that has been going on from the build-up of the Russian troops along the border throughout this war now, and documenting everything. And they go through a rigorous process and methodology and make it available to everyone. There are so many people with different agendas of what they have to do, and this is just an invaluable, like a valuable resource. Valuable resource. And you know that it is everything is vetted, and what goes on there goes through, as I said, like a rigorous process. And this is like one example of like really amazing work, and shows the power of OSINT. And I think the map is also cited across many newspapers and was also on TV mentioned many times because I saw Ben doing interviews. So this is definitely like a great example. And a current one as well of what you can do in OSINT. So really good example. And one that I did, I don't like to talk about lots of the things, but one that I also use for training as well. But you see, like, I never publish any articles on these things because I don't want to give away any techniques or anything that I did. But one of the things that stood out for me was very interesting because it was, I think I mentioned it at a conference or so, so it should be maybe public, but I can describe it. So there was a gentleman, and then he went to do something very bad in another country, and he kind of like left a comment on a Facebook post, and this comment was something like, "This was my house before I left," And then the question was to find out who this guy is and where he lives, because the evidence from the other Facebook accounts and other social media accounts is crucial for prosecution purposes, because this is one of the biggest thing when some of these guys return, and then to show that and prove, because I'm not a legal expert, but in some countries it's challenging to say like, you didn't just go to this country to do, humanitarian work. You were there actually to do very bad things. And now we have proof. So this comment stood out for this particular reason. And the photo was very difficult to geolocate. If I showed it to you now, there is not much, to geolocate. But I like to use it because I want to emphasize in the training the pivoting. Just because this photo doesn't give a lot of details, you can still find out where this is and eventually geolocate it. And what I did was going through other photos, and then I could cross-reference this photo with another image that had more details. From that image, I could then find out, kind of like narrow it down to a marina, because you could see the boat registration number. And from the marina, I just had the hypothesis that if that person was walking around and taking photos in that marina, that person must be living somewhere around like a radius of whatever, 5 kilometers, 10, 20, whatever, in that city. And then by combining another detail that stood out in the first image, which was the color of a building, which was pretty distinct. And I had to ask, I asked also friends and everyone, like, am I crazy? But this color is very distinct. And combining both, I was able to geolocate the image. And from the geolocation on Google Earth, kind of like, find out the exact location from where it was taken. So I could find the address and the name. And then I forwarded everything to the authorities. Yep. And then I also got an email quickly back like, hey, thank you. And they were pretty interested in the methodology of like how. And then I explained everything of how I did. And so this was one that was for me like something that, that was successful. And I like to show just because of the fact of pivoting, because this is oftentimes in OSINT investigations that it's not that straightforward. I mean, some cases are like straightforward, but in some you just have to, try and think, and try to put them together and think, if that doesn't work, then pivot and do something. And this pivoting, for instance, where you can learn it is also through these CTFs, missing person CTF, where you look at social media profiles and you have these, these details that you have to find and you get points for it. And then you can't find it on this account, then let's try and find other social media accounts. Maybe that information is somewhere else. And this pivoting is crucial, and it's a good practice through these CTFs as well.
Thank you very much, Lorand. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this little interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was very, very nice.
You are welcome. And thank you again. And we hope you a lot of success in all your projects.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.